Hi, I'm Hannah Barton and I am doing my presentation on the Reilly against Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council case. Some basic facts about this case was that there was a woman who had befriended a man and they had an unromantic relationship. They had invested in property. The man had lived in the property, but the woman never lived in the property. She would frequently stay over, but it was purely platonic. There was no romantic relationship at all. They would frequently go on holidays together. They had a very close relationship. Now, the woman was eventually promoted to head teacher at a local primary school. Just around about the same time, the man was found to be convicted of downloading indecent images of children onto his computer. Now, the woman never disclosed this to the local authority, nor did she disclose it to the school governors, so they never knew about this relationship. Eventually they did find out, and she was suspended for her failure to disclose such a relationship with a sex offender, and the allegation was actually upheld at a disciplinary panel. Now, the woman kept insisting that the relationship didn't threaten the safety of the children, that there was no issues with safeguarding or well-being or anything like that. But the woman was dismissed from her post permanently. She was basically fired. And she eventually appealed for unfair dismissal, which this case is really centred around. So the court in this case had to determine if the dismissal was unfair and if the local authority had acted reasonably in dismissing her. Now, the court applied a tripartite test that was set out by Lord Justice Arnold in the British Home Stores case. Now, he had stated that there was three aspects that had to be determined by the court to determine if a dismissal has been fair or unfair. And these were that if the woman was under a duty to disclose the relationship with the sex offender to the local authority and to the school governors. The second was that if there was such a duty, was a dismissal reasonable? And the third is if there was a thorough investigation carried out. And if the answer to all of these was no, then the dismissal was unfair. Now, this tripartite test was approved by Lord Justice Mummery in the Foley against Post Office case. And he had stated that this test went further than just determining if a dismissal is fair. It went into a lot of detail about reasonableness and unreasonableness. And it was really this test that has been applied to the majority of cases that deal with dishonesty as a result of being dismissed from a post. And it's been a really important test that has been applied, and like I said, this was applied in this case. The court eventually found that the woman did have a duty under her contract and under section 175 of the Education Act 2002, and this was to allow for a governing body of a maintained school to make arrangements to promote the well-being and the safety of children at such a school. Now, the woman did accept that she did have a duty to safeguard children as her post as a head teacher of a primary school. It's pretty common sense, pretty straightforward, and you would expect for anybody to reasonably expect that was part of their job. Now, the Supreme Court eventually upheld the tribunal's reasoning for the dismissal in this case. So the woman's appeal was dismissed. The original employment tribunal's reasoning for her dismissal was upheld and approved by the Supreme Court in this case. And the reasoning was on four grounds. The first was that the woman had failed to disclose that she was in a very close relationship with a sex offender. The second was that there was a genuine belief made by the local authority and by the school governors that her failure to disclose such a relationship would amount to gross misconduct. The third was that the local authority did have reasonable grounds to believe that the head teacher would have to disclose that she had a relationship with a sex offender. Even if it's not in contract, even if it's implied, it does not have to be in writing. This seems to be a pretty straightforward expectation of a head teacher. And the fourth was that the woman's constant failure throughout all aspects of appeals and trials and everything, she continued to state that she didn't think she was wrong. She did not have such a duty to disclose this. Yes, she had a duty to safeguard children and ensure that they were safe in the school environment, but she still believed that she did not have to tell the local authority or the local government about her relationship with the sex offender. Now, this is pretty common sense, you would believe, and the court did address that. They did address that this sort of relationship, if you were to be friends with someone and it turned out that they were downloading indecent images and you were a head teacher of primary school, this would be pretty self-explanatory. It would be pretty expected that you would tell someone that was in charge that yes, you have this relationship. If you need this relationship to end, that can be done. But the court did address the fact that if she had done this, there is a potential to have procedures and safeguarding procedures to put in place, so she could have potentially carried on this relationship with this man, all while remaining head teacher of this school. But she didn't. She continued to state that she didn't have a duty, there was no issue with her being a friend with a sex offender, but the court obviously disagreed with this, and it is pretty straightforward as to why. She was dismissed, and the man and she, whether they would remain friends, don't really know, but yeah, so that is the basic case. It's mostly centred around unfair dismissal, and there's a lot of tests that were addressed in all these cases, but it is pretty obvious that this tripartite test that was developed by Arnold in British Home Stores is the top test. It's the most important, it's the most applied, it's the most followed, and it's the most reasonable and the most fair. So yeah, that is unfair dismissal, and that is the Reilly against Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council case. Thank you.